My mom was an addict. Her substances of choice were a variety of pills. I don't even remember them all. I know Xanax was the major one, though. The things she did to feed her addiction led to her own death. I miss her so much, but I can't shy away from the truth. My mom suffered from anxiety and agoraphobia, okay, as well as a severe back injury. And it was hard for her to venture very far outside by herself, so I accompanied her to many doctor's appointments. She'd even call me out of school on days she couldn't find a ride. And I'd sit there in the waiting room with her, and I'd listen to her lie about these ailments I'd never heard before. And the doctors always prescribed her something. Let me tell you, her acting ability could rival Meryl Streep's, okay? I mean, no joke. She once called my cousin Jamie crying and begging her to drive and get her pills from a pharmacy across town. And Jamie, being so quick to help, she dropped what she was doing to take the trip, and she also picked up some Subway on the way over, because that's Jamie. And as my mom hung up the phone and wiped away her crocodile tears, she whispered, "Got it," to herself. But it just churned my stomach. As doctors began to get suspicious of her, she turned to the black market. I was 17 by this point, and she did whatever she could to get her fix. She'd send me on Amtrak trips just up and down the Central Valley with envelopes full of money, and I'd come back with bags and bags of pills. I hated being her mule, but she was such a good actress. I mean, a mom's guilt is hard to deal with, and I'd sit there on those trains and just feel hopeless, knowing that if I got caught, I could go to jail. And why would she risk me like that if she wasn't really in pain? I don't know. I didn't have the tools to reckon with what was truth and what was fiction at the time. It all came to its head one horrible evening. She had been going through withdrawals. She couldn't find a connection. She was freaking out and fiending. I was sitting on the computer chatting in some gay chat room. She knew that I did this even though I was still 17 because I was that kid. Anyway, I guess out of pure desperation, she asked me to ask the guys in the chat room if they had any pills and they'd be willing to sell. So I created a new profile and I logged in and I started private messaging guys of all ages, just explaining my mom's situation, assuring them I wasn't a cop, yet no one was really willing to help. The only guy who did say yes, however, did not want to exchange pills for money. He wanted an hour alone with me instead. So that was a no, of course. I told my mom the bad news, and in turn, I got a response that still brings waves of nausea back to me to this day. So you'd rather sit there and watch me suffer instead of taking an hour with someone nice enough to offer? The guilt was so incredibly deep in that moment. I mean, I figured she was right. I was trying to get laid anyway, albeit with someone under 20 and over 60, but my mom was here suffering, and I could see it. I didn't know how withdrawals really worked at the time, so in that moment, I hated every doctor, and I decided that I needed to do what I thought was right to protect my mom. I refused to go into any details about that evening, mostly because I don't want to recall it for myself. It was traumatizing and humiliating, and it laid the groundwork that built my future as a sex worker. I felt worthless, disgusting, and used. My relationship with my mom changed after that. I couldn't really look at her for a really long while, and I could tell that she felt ashamed, but we never addressed it. She found a new doctor that was private pay and just used him, even though it was more expensive, and that was that. This is the doctor that eventually referred her to a cheaper doctor who immediately prescribed her Oxy, and she only took that twice before she had a negative reaction with one of her other medications and went into cardiac arrest. My mom died without giving me any closure surrounding her treatment of me or that night. I love her so much, and I've forgiven her. However, I've spent years of my life letting others use my body for their own fun because deep down, I felt it was all I was worth. I've grown so much since leaving the sex industry, and I see that it could have been an empowering route had I not had so much trauma and low self-worth. It could have been an avenue that strengthened me, but instead I spent 7 years of my life slowly selling my dignity away. I've learned since then that addiction will cause people to act in very insane ways. I understand. I have forgiven. And because of those experiences, I'm the person I am today. And I'm proud to only be a pothead. Shit, I don't even drink. Over the last few years, I've felt kind of like a toddler, discovering a world that I never knew existed, breaking my boundaries from limping through my past to freely frolicking into the future. My self-worth has skyrocketed. My confidence is limitless, and my optimism is pure. I'm okay.
The Equi Institute is a radical trans and queer organization advocating for gender-affirming, trauma-informed, and culturally relevant services. Currently, the Equi Institute is administering a community health program for the residents of the C3 villages that's being funded by the Oregon Health Authority. They have a small team of community health workers and volunteer nurses that provide community education, basic first aid, and wraparound and safety net services for more than 100 residents of the villages. I'm dedicated to supporting many progressive organizations and charities. While the subject matter of my videos may not always directly correlate to the vision of each organization I'm featuring, the baseline foundation is the same, being both equality-focused and support-driven. Kindness is contagious, so don't be afraid to spread it around wherever you go. And to learn more about the Equi Institute, please click the link in the description below or visit equi-institute.org. That's EQUI-institute.org. And I hope you decide to subscribe and to continue to stitch a ride along my Calico Quilt.